Good morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Pripstel with the County Exec's Office. Thanks for joining us for a weekly press briefing this morning. Today, we're going to get started with comments from County Executive Pittman.
All right. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. So let's start with COVID. I think somebody, and I can't remember who it was, said recently that while there's light at the end of the tunnel, we're still in the damn tunnel. And that's very true in our county. We appear to have variants in the Baltimore region that are driving case rates up. And while we're pretty close to steady, they have not dropped to the levels that we had hoped by this point. But there is no hospitalization spike predicted. So while we're asking residents to continue to mask and distance, we do not plan to implement new restrictions at the county level at this time. Our Department of Health is just quietly and efficiently continuing to deliver vaccines with a focus on our most vulnerable residents. And just yesterday got 5,000 doses administered. Our new direct appointment system, rather than pre-registration, is working smoothly, and our community vaccination clinics are operating almost every day at new locations, reaching people who might not otherwise be able to get to a clinic. But this morning we got news that CDC is recommending that providers pause administration of Johnson & Johnson vaccines to allow time for investigation of 6 cases in which blood clots were reported. So our county's allocation of J&J doses is small, but the temporary loss of those vaccines, hopefully temporary, will result in reallocation of all doses. And in fact, this week, our Department of Health allocation dropped from 6,000 to 3,800. But fortunately, our work to stand up a state mass vaccination site at Navy Stadium is paying off, and it will open this Thursday. And by next week, should be administering 1,500 doses per day. The mass vaccination sites do tend to serve people who have cars, who are good at internet surfing, and we can't let that happen here. Our county is known as the best place for all, and our vaccination sites must be accessible for all. So our plan to make that happen is first through our Office of Transportation. Anyone can call for our county operated vaccine service, 410-222-0225, and request a ride to their vaccination appointment. Second, our bus service, AA Gold College Parkway bus route is operating fare-free during the pandemic, and will take folks right to the Roe Boulevard Taylor Avenue intersection where the Navy Stadium is. So that's another option for people. And then our Department of Aging and Disabilities has their taxi voucher program for folks 55 and older or with a disability. And that gives people a 50% discount on a taxi ride. And that number is 410-222-4222. And then finally, the city of Annapolis is going to be providing regular shuttle service. I believe it's every 20 minutes between Church Circle and Navy Stadium on Saturdays and Sundays. So folks in Annapolis can pop on up to the stadium and get their vaccine. So I look forward to meeting the governor and the mayor at the site on Friday for a tour of the operations. I hope to see many of you there as well. I also want to thank our delegation, our Anne Arundel County delegation, for completing a very successful session yesterday. You really did deliver for our residents and passed all 3 of our priority bills: the Tax Relief for Working Families Act, the Housing Trust Fund bill, and the Hotel Tax Fiscal Oversight bill. So good session for Anne Arundel County. Also passed over the weekend was the Police Accountability Act. And this passed on the eve of our Anne Arundel County Administrative Trial Board hearing, also in the middle of the Derek Chauvin trial that people are watching. And I just have to say that it's a very, emotions are high around policing issues right now. And my message to everybody is please listen to one another, whether you're a police officer or a victim of bad policing. Everybody, all of us want and deserve justice. And in Anne Arundel County, as we undertake the process of implementing the new law, particularly creating the state-mandated Police Accountability Board, all of our stakeholders will be heard, and we will, in fact, appoint a task force to guide us through this process in the coming weeks. Finally, Economic Development Corporation is opening grant applications to nonprofit organizations in the county starting May 10th. They'll run through the 21st. Nonprofits can go to arundelbiz.org, get information about the process so they can plan their applications. We have $1.9 million available to our county nonprofits. And then finally, just want to let people know in advance that next Tuesday night, which is normally Tuesday night with the county executive, we're doing a town hall on the Bay Crossing. It's the night before the Anne Arundel County hearing on the Bay Crossing study. And I think my position has been made pretty clear. We're doing this in coordination with the Broadneck Council and some of our allies, both on the other side of the Bay and on this side, really making a point that we cannot and should not let the state move forward with a decision that would not be able to be reversed to identify the current span as a site for a third span on the Bay Bridge without much more further study about the impacts of that. So we expect a large group of people at that, and prepare everybody for the hearings and the public comment period. So with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Kalyana.
Thank you, County Executive. Started with our data where we are. We're seeing that our case rate is pretty flat. It's almost identical to last week, 22.5 this week compared to 22.4 last week. We had 5 deaths this week compared to 5 last week. Our hospitalizations are going up slowly, but as the county executive noted, our projections suggest that the next few weeks we'll see them top out, maybe about 10 to 15% more at most. So it's really critical to remember that the hospitalizations are being driven in the younger age group who haven't been prioritized for vaccines yet. So it's really important for folks to remember that COVID is not gone. And that it's important to protect yourself, mask, distance, while you're waiting to get the vaccine. We are seeing that our percent positivity is going up 7.9%, and our testing is pretty flat in that 2.5 to 2.575% of the population. Last week it was 2.6%. And so it's critical for people to continue to get tested as they are going out and about, maybe exposed or have symptoms. Can be particularly difficult right now because it's allergy season and people are trying to figure out, do I have allergies or is this some sort of illness? Please get tested out of an abundance of caution. With respect to our vaccines, because of the federal issues with J&J manufacturing, our doses and everybody's doses nationwide have been decreased. So this week we are getting only 3,800 doses as opposed to the 6,000 we had gotten last week. We will be continuing our community vaccination clinics, our homebound vaccination program, our intellectual and developmental disability program, and we'll be making adjustments to our standard clinics to accommodate for the decrease in doses. There is no further pre-registration, but we do continue to prioritize equity along with speed. So we're going to continue to offer opportunities for those who are 65 and older, those who are 16 to 64 with high-risk conditions, and that intellectual and developmental disability group to have access to appointments before other groups, before we put those appointments out there, because they are in a higher risk category. That said, everybody over the age of 16 is now eligible for a vaccine. So we strongly recommend that you do go out and get an appointment and get vaccinated. I want to talk now about the the information that just broke today about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The FDA and the CDC this morning issued guidance suggesting a pause in vaccinations using the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and the Maryland Department of Health has put out an order to that effect, and we are suspending any vaccinations with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Some of the facts in this is that 6.8 million doses of this vaccine have been administered nationwide. There have been 6 cases of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, which is a pretty rare event, combined with a low platelet count. And it is this combination of 2 symptoms that is prompting this pause. They noted that this is similar to what was seen in Europe with the AstraZeneca vaccine, and they are looking into this issue. All 6 of these cases occurred in women between the ages of 18 and 48, and symptoms occurred between 6 to 13 days after vaccination. The risk for anybody who's received the vaccine over a month ago is extremely low. It's important to note that this is a rare disorder, and that this is a rare occurrence after vaccination. And this pause is being done out of caution because of this reporting to find out, A, what is causing this problem? Is it related to the vaccine? And B, to see if putting this out there will identify additional cases that may not have been reported to date. The CDC is convening their advisory committee on immunization practices tomorrow to further review these cases, assess their potential significance, and then to provide further guidance on what to do next. And so we will be waiting for that advice. It's important to remember that it is common to have flu-like symptoms after the vaccine, and that includes headache. But critically, the symptoms people should look out for if they've gotten the J&J vaccine in the last 3 weeks are severe headache, abdominal pain, leg pain, or shortness of breath. If you do have any of those symptoms, you should contact your healthcare provider or seek assistance in an emergency room if any of those symptoms are severe. And please do let them know that you have received the J&J vaccine. We know that in the health department, we have administered a little over 1,034 doses of Johnson & Johnson. 850 of those were during the month of March, over 3 weeks ago. 184 of them have been administered in the past 2 weeks. We are looking through the data to see how many Anne Arundel County residents have been vaccinated with Johnson & Johnson, and the Maryland Department of Health is putting out a clinician letter to clinicians to alert them to this and to alert them to what to look for on this issue. And then lastly, I want to note one item. As county executive noted, number of bills passed the legislature. One important one is the local health department funding bill, which did pass. I want to thank Vice Chair Chang, Delegate Henson of the Appropriations Committee, and Chair McIntosh for getting that bill passed. It has funding increases starting in fiscal year 23. And it's critical to bolster the infrastructure of our health department, particularly after this pandemic. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Jenny.
Thank you both. Now we'll open up the floor for questions from the media. If you could please put your name and affiliation in the chat, we'll call on you when it's your turn. We'll start with Danielle O from the Capitol.
Hi, thanks. So with the new CDC guidance to halt the J&J vaccinations, will that at all affect the opening of the mass vaccination site on Thursday?
That's a good question. So we are asking about that. I don't know the answer to that yet. But okay. Likely because J&J production had dropped drastically, and that had already been accounted for in our state's allocation. And so it just doesn't constitute as many doses as it had in prior weeks.
Okay, and of the J&J doses that the county already received, are all of those administered?
No, we have about a little over 200 doses on hand that we will not be administering at this time.
And what happens to those? You just store them until further advice?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Next, we'll have John Frenaye from Ion Annapolis.
Sorry about that. I've got two real quick questions. I guess the easy one first is, with no pre-registration required now, is it still recommended or necessary to unsubscribe from the notifications?
It is not necessary to do that, because we will be sending that out only to a limited number. If you are in those groups, we would ask in those groups that I mentioned, over 65, 16 to 64 with high risk and intellectual and developmental disability. Well, we do ask that you do that if you get it, but we're also checking our lists against the state database through that CRISP to decrease our lists as people.
Okay, good. And the other one, this is sort of a little bit of a shift here, but with the Naval Academy now going on with a full-on graduation in some sort of modification, they have specifically said that the Blue Angels will be flying there with the flight demonstration. Typically, the Naval Academy hosts probably several thousand people between Hospital Point and Ingram Field. Is the county concerned? Does the county or the city have any plans in place for crowds? Is that an issue? Because people like to see the Blues fly.
I can answer that, I guess. Dr. K looks frozen. Concerns, yes, absolutely. But the restrictions that are in place every day are in place now. So people should just continue to mask and distance as best they can. And, I'm sure that there will be, particularly, these are outdoor gatherings to see the Blue Angels fly, and people should just take precautions when they do that.
Okay, thanks.
County Executive, if I can just add that we'll be increasing our street signs, and we're adding new mask signs around at Hillman Garage and locations around the city. So obviously all of the protocols still remain in place, but we'll just be sending out more reminders for people.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Rob Lang from WBAL.
Thanks. Good morning. What happens to people who have Johnson & Johnson vaccine appointments? Are they being rescheduled? They're going to be assigned another vaccine? What happens there?
Yeah, we're working through those details right now. So it's going to be, the goal is going to be to reschedule them, although for some of the people who were getting them, the point was to have a 1-dose vaccine for simplicity, particularly our homebound population. So we're working through those details right now.
At this point, how many people do you know might have had a Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Or how many people do you need to reach?
Who have already had a vaccine? Is that what you're asking?
No, who have scheduled Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we're only scheduling those through limited clinics, such as intellectual and developmental disabilities or homebound. So it's not been for the general public that we've been using that. We've been using it more for clinical considerations. So like I said, we have about 200 doses on hand. So it's fewer than that in terms of appointments.
All right, thank you very much.
Next, we'll go to Brooks DeBose from the Capitol.
Hello, a bit of a change in topic, question for the county executive. I wanted to get your thoughts on the news last week about crack pipes being distributed in Annapolis, and I just wanted to maybe get your, thoughts on sort of balancing the need to address substance use disorder with these kinds of harm reduction programs, while also taking into account sort of maybe the cultural or environmental concerns that come with those kinds of things in terms of public education and whatnot.
Yeah, I was aware and supportive of harm reduction including needles. And I know most jurisdictions in Central Maryland are doing that, and I support our efforts to do that because I think it's important for even people who are using and are addicted to have some way to interact with the Department of Health and with the team there, because those relationships eventually build the trust that moves people into rehab sooner. But the crack, the pipes, I know they're used not just for crack. That was something that I think I reacted in the same way that some residents did, raised my eyebrow and questioned whether it was in the same category. So while I am definitely open to hearing any case for doing something like that, to me, it's a stretch. So I was pleased to hear that the health department, that Dr. Kalyanaraman said what he said, which is that this is a case where clearly more listening needed to happen with the community. And I know that they're doing that right now, and that they have stopped distributing those. So I support that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a question from Kate Amara in the chat for Dr. Kalyanaraman. She's wondering if you could repeat how many doses of Johnson & Johnson the county has administered to date in the last several weeks, and if the FDA warning changes the way the county follows up with patients after they get their shot. You're on mute, Dr. Kalyanaraman.
Sorry about that. So we have administered we've administered 1,034 doses to date. 850 of those were done over 3 weeks ago. 184 of them were done in the past 3 weeks. And so we'll be reaching out to folks, I know the state is doing that as well, to look at how we communicate what people should be watching out for in terms of symptoms. And then we'll need to see what advice or recommendations the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices puts out tomorrow or in the coming days around A, continuation of this vaccine, and also B, what cautions or guidance is given to people who get the vaccine and from a go forward standpoint. So we'll have to see about that.
Thank you. Last call for questions. Seeing no more in the chat, that'll conclude for today. Thank you, everybody.